From VTV Channel 6 Studios in downtown Vernal, this is Local Point with your host, Chris Piner.
I'm your host, Chris Piner, and welcome to Local Point. I want to welcome Tal Ehlers into the VTV6 studios to discuss September National Preparedness Month. And I think it's been a little while since you've been here before, but you're no stranger to the place, Tal. Good to have you back.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
So September is, I don't recall if that's what we were talking about last time, but it's definitely right in your wheelhouse.
Absolutely. We have a lot going on here in the Uinta Basin for September, which is National Preparedness Month. And the significance is we want our citizens in the basin to be more resilient, to be more prepared in the event of the unexpected, a disaster, an emergency. We certainly want people to be able to take care of themselves and their loved ones within their own households. And so as we look towards September and National Preparedness Month, we want to remind people that the more preparations that they make within their own homes, the more comfortable they will be in an actual disaster.
And we're right around that time of commemorating the Katrina, Hurricane Katrina. So I've seen so much press about this. It reminds me of the terrible disaster that happened to them, and some were prepared.
Yes, and you know what we need to realize from these disasters is that there are a lot of people out there, I think, that believe the government has capabilities that it really doesn't have. And we do not want people just waiting for the government to show up. I mean, there's terrific local resources, state resources, and federal resources, but it may take days. As we saw in Hurricane Katrina, it may take days or weeks for resources to arrive to help all the people that need it. And so if we look at preparedness from this standpoint, not from a point of extremism or survivalism, but just something as simple as what are those items that you would not want your family to be without in a time of crisis so that you can remain as comfortable as possible until normalcy returns. That is what we want people to have. So simple things like food, water, clothing, and shelter and fuel can help people through a difficult time, but it also provides the government's time to get their resources moving, to be able to reach out to their partners, regional or statewide partners, where they can bring in resources if distribution routes have been disrupted or if resources were destroyed in the calamity like we saw during Hurricane Katrina. If people have their own resources, food, water, clothing, shelter, and fuel, they can take care of themselves, and they and their families will be far more comfortable.
So when you have a national month such as this, it's really all about awareness. Is that, am I on the right track?
Absolutely.
Nationally, we're going to be hearing a lot in the month of September about these kinds of things, being prepared for anything, particularly natural disasters, it sounds like, or even unnatural disasters, but just...
Certainly we want the awareness, but we want people to take action. We want people to go out there and do those simple little things that can mean the difference between being comfortable or not having what you need. Simple things like 72-hour kits. Simple things like food. Imagine this, if all the grocery stores were closed for whatever reason, or power is down and we can't run those credit cards, how are we going to go ahead and purchase these items? And people don't realize that for about 50 cents a day per person, they can have a pound of dry grain or legumes, rice, oatmeal, things like that, and that will give them the calories that they need to take care of themselves for that day. And people don't understand that you could actually store enough of these items under a twin bed that would take care of one person's needs for months at 50 cents a day. So of course we're not talking about lobster and steak or anything of that nature, but it would be the calories needed for an individual to get by, to be able to fill their stomach until those additional resources can be brought in or until those grocery stores are restocked and can open back up again. And so we want the awareness, but we want people to take action and to have what they need in their homes under their control so that it is accessible when they need it the most. We certainly don't want anybody to ever go hungry or not have that next drink of water. We want people to have what they need, but more often than not that is going to come at their own hands, and that won't always be able to be delivered immediately through the government as we saw during Hurricane Katrina.
Not as soon as we'd want it anyway. I like that distinction between awareness and actually a call to action. Be aware, but use that awareness to actually do something. Get prepared if you're not already. Excellent. Does the, now you work for the county.
I work for you in a county.
And that is the department, or the Office of?
Office of Emergency Management.
Emergency Management. Does the county have, do they have things in place?
I'll tell you what, the county has terrific resources for emergency response. We have a terrific fire district, and I'll also speak not only for Uintah County, but for the Basin with Daggett County and the Tribe and Duchesne County. We have terrific resources out there for law enforcement, for fire, for emergency services, our EMTs and our paramedics. We have terrific resources. What we don't have, and this surprises people, but what we don't have warehouses full of stuff, full of food or full of blankets just waiting for a disaster to happen.
Right.
We don't have those kinds of resources or that kind of funding to supply that. And so while we are able to respond to single incidents, imagine a disaster that's big enough to affect multiple jurisdictions simultaneously. Now we're going to be calling in other resources. We're going to be reaching out to our state partners at the Wasatch Front. We're going to be reaching out possibly to our FEMA Region 8 partners over in Colorado, trying to bring in additional resources, and that takes time.
Right.
And so when we start to bring that stuff in, we want to do it, and that's part of our plan. If we don't have the resources, we know where to get them. But for people to show up out here, even if we were to set up a Red Cross shelter, you're talking 6 to 12 hours to be able to bring those resources out here to the Basin to help accommodate the needs of our citizens.
This is a man who knows his stuff, right? He's right on it. Tal, I always love to hear you, and you always make me aware every time we get to talk and do some of this. After the break, we'll be discussing more about this year's National Preparedness Month. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
With advanced all-digital cable television from Strata Networks, you can enjoy jaw-dropping digital picture on hundreds of channels, exclusive local programming with VTV6, and follow your favorite college teams in incredible HD on the Pac-12 network, all with no contracts, no costly equipment, and no dishes mounted to your home. For details, visit your Strata store in Roosevelt or Vernal or call 622-5007. Strata Networks. We connect lives.
Welcome back to Local Point. National Preparedness Month is coming up, and we're speaking to Tal Ehlers here at VTV6 Studio about this year's events and activities and just in general awareness and preparedness, right? A call to action, as we said in the first segment. I want to talk to you a little bit more about this scenario of a disaster hitting here locally in this part of our state. What type of communication is, when you mentioned cell towers having limited batteries and things like that, what kind of communication systems are in place to talk to people?
We actually have a number of methods to be able to contact the public and give them notification in the event of an emergency. And it's very interesting because we have this terrific technology today, we have this great infrastructure, and yet this infrastructure that we rely on can be affected by the very disaster that has come our way. And that's why we have redundancy. That's why we have multiple sources for notification. So one of the very simple things that people use on a day-to-day basis would be social media. It would be Facebook, it would be Twitter. That's what a lot of people turn to for emergency notification, and that's a terrific resource, but your technology is only as good as the infrastructure that supports it. And so if you had a fiber optic cable that was gone, like we saw last week in San Juan, Grand, Carbon, and Emery counties, they lost a lot of their customers for one day because they lost a fiber optic cable. Or if you had a power outage and it affected the area for longer than 8 hours, the cellular tower battery backups only go for that period of time, for about 8 hours. And so there's quite a bit to the infrastructure. Even your own phone. How many times have you gone to use your own phone and you look down and you say, oh my battery's almost gone and I don't have my charging cable with me. So like I said, there's a few chinks in the armor that we want to get past.
That's why the redundancy.
There you go. And so there's different things we can do. Number one, believe it or not, the old-fashioned telephone system, the hardline telephones are still a very valuable asset. But the thing that people need to remember is it's not about having the telephone in the house that they have today, the wireless phone that requires a phone line and electricity. Even if you go to the Sprint, the AT&T, the Verizon, the T-Mobile websites, they will all tell you that in a power outage, that their phone services require a corded telephone, you know, the kind that you and I had when we were kids. And it doesn't have to be a dial, but it must be corded. It cannot use electricity, and it must be able to hook directly into a hardline phone line to be able to use it in a power outage, and that way you can still have a phone service. We use a system out here in the basin called Code Red. It is a telephone communication system, and it'll call your home phone, your work phone, your cell phone. It'll send you an email or a text, and it's capable of calling 50,000 phone numbers an hour. It'll call 50,000 phone numbers, and we utilize that quite a bit for emergency notification, as was noticed last year during the Taylor Mountain Road fire. We sent out emergency notifications to Uintah County in that particular instance. So Code Red is a huge asset. Other things we still use is the emergency alert system, which goes through our local radio stations. And we can contact the radio stations, but think about this. How many people still maintain a radio in the home like we did 30 years ago? And typically we have radios in our car only. And so what we'll want to make sure that we still have is a battery operated radio or a crank radio. I know it sounds silly, but we can still use those devices, and somebody has the ability to listen to an AM or an FM radio station and receive public notifications over the emergency alert system. And so that's a little bit of the redundancy that we still use, that we still want to implement in a disaster. We want to be able to get the word out there.
This is not putting all eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Any way that we can get the word out there, whether it's social media, whether it's a hardline phone, the Code Red system, and you will want to go to the Code Red icon on any of the websites, Vernal City, Naples City, Roosevelt City, Duchesne, Daggett, Uintah, the Tribe. We all have these links on our websites for you to sign up on Code Red.
That's good. I was going to ask you that. I've done it, but it has been a while, so I wouldn't know how to tell someone else until now.
People can go in and sign up. Takes about 5 minutes, very simple. But also the emergency alert system that we use with the radio stations is still a very big tool that we use for public outreach in an emergency.
I love that. Well, let's use September as awareness and a call to action to actually sign up for Code Red. Everyone should do it, right? And that really is, that is the basin, is that right? Or the Vernal area?
It is the basin. Duchesne, Daggett, the Tribe, and Uintah. And people want to be in the know. They want to know what's going on with that fire. They want to know what's going on with that flood or that blizzard. They want to know, and Code Red is a way for them to be able to be a part of that system. And so if we have an emergency, we want to send out that information, and we will use Code Red first.
I love that. I have received some of those messages, even test messages that have been sent out. We're trying this out, make sure you receive it, and there's comfort in knowing that that kind of communication is in place, and I knew that you were involved in that as well. So if you haven't signed up for Code Red yet, what would be the quickest and easiest way for our viewers to do that?
Go to one of the websites for your local city or county government, and there will be a Code Red link.
So there. Roosevelt City might have it right on there. Vernal City and Duchesne and all of those. Go right there. You look for the Code Red and sign up for it. You mentioned, I know we just have a few seconds left, but you mentioned also things like 72-hour kits, food and basic resources. Is that something that is provided locally? How do people do that? Or get online? I guess any of those kind of things now. But.
You can buy a 72-hour kit that's already assembled. I recommend that people build a 72-hour kit.
Make your own.
Yeah, 90% of the stuff that you want in your 72-hour kit, you already have in your house. Go through those cupboards and cabinets and drawers and closets. Find those things that you want, like a pocket knife.
Pick it up here locally.
Matches, Ziploc bags. Buy it locally. Support the local retailers in the basin. But put together 72-hour kits. Those items that you would not want to be without for 72 to 96 hours after an incident hurts, but before help arrives.
Tal, you always get me thinking, and I hope that's what our viewers are doing as well. That's the whole idea of today's show. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Local Point. That's all we have for today's show. Be sure to like VTV6 on Facebook for updates on your favorite local programming. Don't forget Code Red and National Awareness Month, and we'll see you next time.